All right, everybody, we will go ahead and get started. Good evening, and thank you for joining IVMA's first ever Zoom town hall meeting, hosted by Dr. Matt Cantrell, IVMA immediate past president, and Dr. Hillary Christner, IVMA president-elect. I'm Lisa Purius, IVMA executive director, and I will be the moderator for our session. This session is being recorded, so it can be available to other IVMA members later who couldn't participate. I have a couple of housekeeping reminders. First, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box on your screen. We will cover as many questions as we can at the end of the brief presentation, and we'll get to as many as possible. If we don't get to your question, please email me at info@invma.org, and I will follow up with you. Second, in the interest of sound quality and to minimize background noises during the presentation, we have muted all participants in the call, although I can hear a little background noise right now, so I apologize for that. Our focus and purpose here this evening is to share what we know and to engage our veterinary community, which is so important and valuable at this time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Drs. Cantrell and Christner.
All right, everybody. So we're going to go forward to the next slide and I'll get us started. The genesis of this town hall was essentially that, IVMA leadership really felt like we needed to touch base. We needed to have a forum for veterinarians in Indiana to actually come together and, ask questions in an actual live format and be able to kind of talk to each other. Again, before I go too much farther, we've said it a few times, but if you notice that you are not muted, please do mute yourself. Just to make the sound better for everybody. But, what are we doing right now in the new world of COVID-19? As veterinarians, we're balancing a lot. We're caring for our patients. We have, as veterinarians and leaders in our practices, we are concerned about the health of our employees, the health of our clients, ourselves, and not just our physical health, but we need to be thinking about our own well-being during this process. We're trying to ensure that our business is safe and successful while we are actually doing our part in assisting our community. And this is something that, that again, IVMA is acutely in tune with, and that veterinarians are leaders in our communities right now. And our clients, when they see what we're doing and the steps that we're taking to mitigate the effects of this virus, it kind of hits home a little bit more than just reading something on the news or seeing, the latest soundbite. So I think we do have a responsibility to many, many different areas, and it is one big puzzle. So we can move on to the next slide, I think, and Hillary will take it a little bit.
So some people might be wondering what all has IVMA been doing during this time, and what are we doing to help our members. The IVMA community and committees have been meeting on a daily basis, constant conversations and communications with our members, trying to provide daily updates for where things are headed, what's going on. We have been lobbying for veterinary medicine to be designated essential in our state. So we are designated an essential business. We've worked really hard at developing materials, webinars. There were some really good telemedicine webinars that Dr. Cantrell and Dr. Smiley put on, and did some question and answer to help that become an effective part of practice. We've created some COVID-19 materials. If you haven't been to the IVMA webpage, the webpage has materials on there to help you. The IVMA board members, we've had Zoom meetings. They met with state leaders, Board of Animal Health, AVMA leaders, all these things to essentially make sure we're getting the most up-to-date material out to our members. coordinating things like this Zoom meeting, town hall meeting. Lisa has been doing a great job staying on top of these kinds of things, providing us the material that we need to have to effectively navigate this time since it's changing so much. These daily emails and videos, I really recommend that you look into them. We're coordinating this information for our members. We have reached out. We have some legal counsel that will be providing even more information of, how do we navigate these things? What are the best practices for us? What do we do as a small business? How do we navigate? What are the laws saying? And we've reached out to a law firm that's providing us those answers in a pretty concise document that will be a great resource for our members. And the IVMA, Lisa and Lourdes, are continuing to work to provide members information to make sure that they work with other VMAs, know what other VMAs are doing, know what's going on in the state, know what's going on with the governor, and then passing that information on to you. And Lisa, you can move on to the next slide. I think Jim has an AVMA update.
Yeah, sorry, it's moving slow.
That's okay.
I have all these screens going on here. There we go. Let me make sure.
Yep. Good evening.
Jim, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's Jim Weisman. I'm your AVMA delegate. Just wanted to briefly give you a few points of information from the AVMA. I think it's really important to know that the GRD, the Governmental Relations Division, our AVMA facing group in DC, has been very active. Kim McClure, who is the director of that group, has been sharing a lot of information, and the AVMA has really been there with Congress, ensuring, and also in the other departments, to ensure the veterinary medicine is represented and that they're being heard, that our profession is being heard. So I would encourage you to follow the information coming from the AVMA. The IVMA is then continuing to share some of that as well with the new laws that have been passed and hopefully additional laws passed to provide relief via the Department of Labor and different departments that way. But just rest assured that the AVMA is working very hard in DC. In addition, the AVMA has put out, and again, the IVMA provides some of that, various direction and various ideas to help you in your practice. So use those toolkits that are there, as they can be very beneficial. The other part goes back to making sure that you are receiving the AVMA daily briefs or the smart briefs. Dr. Gail Golab, who is the Chief Veterinary Officer for AVMA, has done a wonderful job of coordinating information and distributing it to the membership. So it's a great opportunity to get a daily update just to see what's happening and have the national view, because understanding then how it impacts your local practice or the area that you're in. So again, if you're not getting those, go to the AVMA website, sign up for those so you automatically get that information. Dr. Golab is doing a wonderful job sharing that. You will also be able to get the AVMA economics information as well. And you can do all this by going to the AVMA website to sign up and get automatic information. And Lisa has a website of the AVMA on the screen now. And if you go there, everything is posted on a routine basis, so it's available for you. So all in all, the AVMA is working hard, and certainly if there's things that you need, want the AVMA to look at the FDA level, USDA level, feel free to email me and I will take that back to the AVMA because they're in direct communication on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I want to just say really quick, the AVMA, again, I will say, is putting out fantastic information. And as you may find through the rest of this webinar, there are areas that are left up to interpretation here in Indiana. And as a practice owner myself, I have found the AVMA guidelines and recommendations to be extremely helpful. So do keep your eyes open for that. And since I interjected myself into this, I will go ahead and introduce the next slide, which is a Purdue College of Veterinary Medicine update, and I believe that we have Dean Reed on. That accurate?
I don't know if Dean Reed has his audio on. I don't show that he does. Jim, do you want to still in here if we can't hear Dean Reed?
I certainly can't. I certainly can if I was going to text the dean.
Okay. I show he's on the camera, but no audio, so.
Well, I'll just make a few general comments and then about the academic side of things and the dean as he's trying to get on. Certainly, I think a lot of people have heard and probably know, working with students or hearing from students at the college, and certainly hearing the media about Purdue itself, that classes were moved online. And so we, of course, in the college followed suit initially with the first through third year students. And then as of Monday morning, our fourth year students will transition to clinical blocks for their last 2 rotations of this academic year. So the faculty, the clinical faculty, and everyone in the college is working very hard to ensure that we can get those materials delivered to them in a virtual setting and ensure that they're obtaining the training they need and the skill development they need to be ready to go, as all our veterinarians are, graduates are, practice ready when they leave campus. As far as a few of the major events that we have at the end of the year: graduation, open house, the awards event, the graduation gala, all of those unfortunately have been canceled for in-person events. And they'll be in some form or another to a virtual presentation. So of course, we're working with our fourth years as they work through this. Certainly it's a disappointment to the leadership, us in the college, because we wanted to celebrate with our students the tremendous amount of work they've done over these years in college, leading through vet school. But in these unprecedented times, it's a situation we're in. So the leadership of the college, we're working on developing some type of virtual ceremonies and events so they can celebrate with their families. Dean Reed, are you on yet? Okay. I'll just make a comment. I'll move on to the veterinary teaching hospital is continuing. Remains open. We're moving to taking urgent and critical cases, both in the small animal hospital and the large animal hospital. So the clinical faculty is there to help you. The specialists are there to help, and certainly continue to call the hospital and seek that specialty help if there's questions you have and things that way. They're still there to do that. And certainly we're still there to serve the public, taking urgent and critical case referrals, as we always do in that regard. We're doing curbside service, just as many of you are doing in your private practices. And the last point I would make is there are students that are not returning to campus. Okay. There are students not returning to campus, and they're staying in their communities. So perhaps you could have them helping you in their practice. They have their academic schedule, but a lot of their classes are being delivered asynchronously, meaning they're not at the exact time every day, so they can watch it on demand. They're watching the broadcast of videos of things. And other than that, that's all. If the dean gets back on here, he'll be able to maybe jump in and add a few more comments if that's okay in a little bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
On to
Hillary.
we're on to wellness. Obviously, at the IVMA and the board, we're all concerned about, everyone's wellness. This is a very stressful time. It's not something that we've been through before. We're really encouraging our members to, use the resources that are available to you. We have things posted on the IVMA website. The AVMA website has wellness things as well. I know we have a wellness task force that is working on materials, and those will be available through the website. Make sure you're reaching out and connecting to those around you, making sure that others are doing okay, connecting with each other. If you don't have someone to connect with, I think anybody on the board, your district representative, the board of governors, if there's somebody that or even if you don't know one of us but needs some assistance, I know Dr. Cantrell, Dr. Smiley, and myself would definitely be willing to have a conversation if that's what you need. And then just remember to take a minute to breathe. We're in uncharted waters. We're all kind of in the same boat. So breathe and connect with those around you when you feel you need to.
All right, my turn again. So we do want to make a point. All of us have heard about essential business and veterinary medicine, the practice of veterinary medicine being deemed an essential activity here in Indiana and most other states in the country. There's a bunch of words there in terms of the executive order from earlier this week, but essentially during the stay-at-home order, if you didn't already know, as veterinarians, we are deemed essential and we can continue to work, and we should continue to work. The reason that we are deemed essential is, for those of us who are small animal practitioners, obviously we have sick patients who need, medical care, and we can't, just ignore that. On the other side of things in veterinary medicine, we have a lot that we are protecting in terms of the food supply and various regulatory functions. And so all of this is very important for us to be able to continue doing the work that we do. If we can go on to the next slide. A question that is coming up a lot is that, does my staff need proof of employment? Do we need to send them with a letter or something like that? The official word is that no, you should not need to have documentation. Indiana State Police have not been told to be just stopping drivers, asking them what they're doing or anything like that. However, we have heard at least one report of exactly that happening. And so, if you think that you need something like that in your area, the IVMA does have a sample letter on our website, for you to potentially give to employees as proof that they are working in an essential job. And then this is the next bullet point here is a huge, question in a lot of our minds. Has the state clarified what are necessary procedures versus non-necessary or non-essential? And no, the answer to that is no. This is open for interpretation and left to your judgment as a veterinarian. We have multiple things that we have to balance here. We have to balance, first and foremost at the moment, the pandemic and the different ramifications that that's having, decreasing the spread of the virus. Also, as this continues to grow in our state and others, the anticipated shortage of personal protective equipment and supplies. So we do have an obligation at the moment to be thinking about conserving our supplies so that it can be redistributed into human medicine. So we have to balance that with, again, our patients and our commitment and oath to our patients, in addition to our businesses. So, on one hand, we are essential and we can go to work, but we have to make our best judgment in terms of what do we see in our clinics. For different areas in the state, certainly, things may not look quite as bad as others. Here in the Marion County, Boone County area, many people have gone to, or many veterinary practices have gone to a sick or urgent care only model. Again, none of that is mandated, and that's the most important point for you to take away from this, I guess, is just that Indiana as a state is not telling you how you have to practice right now. essentially the state is just telling you that you are allowed to practice, and in fact that the purpose that you serve is essential.
Could I stop you there real quick? Do we have Dean Reed on the call? Can you hear us? No, okay. We're still working on that. All right, great. We'll go to the next slide.
Okay, so another question is, what are some of the best practices during this time? And I think that we need to keep in mind that practicing social distancing is required by a executive order. And so this means that we should try to remain 6 feet away from, distance from others, sanitizing, hand sanitizer and sanitizing products available for our employees and customers, prioritizing appointments, like Matt was saying, encourage clients to listen to the stay home directive and conserve the supplies, the PPE, postpone some of those routine surgeries and appointments, maybe consider offering telemedicine to clients that you have a valid VCPR with. Think of new communication protocols, for your clients. Can you use more email or your social media page to maybe allow them to know that you are only doing curbside pickup? Providing curbside care for your clients can include, the clients come, they can call when they arrive, a staff member can come out, pick up those patients, and it kind of eliminates, some of the exposure to clients in your practice. It protects you and your staff, and I think it's important to discuss with the clients that, we're also thinking of their health. We want to protect them as well. And that's a piece of what we're trying to do. We're unaware, like Matt said, of specific work documents that need, for travel to and from your practice. We hope it doesn't come to that. And communicate. Communicate and check in with your staff regularly. We can work together to solve these challenges. I think the IVMA has put out a lot of material to help that, and we continue to work on that, trying to attack these challenges together. How can we fulfill our oath, take care of our patients, take care of our clients to the best of our ability as we face the pandemic?
Really quick before, so this slide, are you still talking about this, Hillary, this part?
Yes, but I'm having trouble
Okay.
seeing now my slides up. And then the next question becomes, what do you do if you have an employee that tests positive or exhibits symptoms? And under the Indiana executive order, these are kind of the things we need to adhere to. Actively encourage sick employees to stay home. I hope that we all do that anyway. We need to have them be fever-free without medication for at least 72 hours, a full 3 days, and symptoms have improved. We need to also encourage them that they need to stay home at least 7 days past the first beginning of symptoms. So it doesn't necessarily, we need to make sure that they know that they don't have to have a healthcare provider's note. These are things that in this time we need to be thinking of our staff, thinking of our clients, and symptoms that show up, acute respiratory sickness, those kinds of things we need to take seriously. Some of the health care providers' offices and medical facilities are extremely busy, and asking them to provide that documentation. My husband's a paramedic. They're not asking him to provide documentation at this point, but they are asking them to adhere by these these rules as well. Ensure that your sick leave policies are up to date, but also let's try to be flexible with our employees and allow sick employees to stay home to care for themselves and family members. Separating employees who have acute respiratory illness or symptoms from other employees, send them home, those kind of things. Again, I think most of us have asked our staff. I hope we're asking our staff, if you don't feel well at this time, let's please stay home. And if you send your employees home through, because of suspected illness, you're required to comply with any pay and sick leave policies that you currently have in place. You're not currently required to provide anything additional this time for pay or compensation for those employees who are outside your current policies and procedures. However, the amendments and the IVMA is working on getting information out to everyone about the FMLA and federal sick leave, the changes to those policies that will be in effect from April 2nd, I believe, until the end of the year. Is that correct, Lisa? From what I read
That's
today,
correct, yes.
From our attorney, that is going to help us as employers. I'm a small business owner as well. It's going to help us allow our employees to be home when they need to be. And that's one of the great benefits, I think, of being a member right now, is I feel like the documentation that the attorney's office is providing really spells out some of these things and explains how we can be helped while we're helping our employees at this time.
Great. Can we hear Dr. Reed, Dean Reed?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Great,
Thank
we got your sound.
Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties. Yeah.
That's okay. Dr. Wiseman covered a few of the activities and updates from the college. Is there anything you would like to share with the group?
Yeah, I was able to hear that, so I won't repeat a lot of what Jim said. Well, let me just say that this time last week, our students were preparing. Well, actually, a little bit longer than a week ago, preparing for spring break, and they came back on Monday, and they found a different Purdue University. While they were gone, the university transitioned 5,000 courses to an online format, and nearly all of the buildings are locked, and students have been asked to leave campus by the 30th of this month, although there'll be probably around 1,300, 1,400 students that will have to remain in the dorms because they don't have any place to go, and many of these are international students. Of course, all the restaurants are closed, all the bars are closed, and other businesses, and the only access that students have to campus is through the library, Hicks Library. Veterinary students can still access the library in Lynn Hall. So we transitioned all of our courses to an online format. The faculty did a tremendous job, worked really, really hard. And it was challenging to get the first 3 years courses online. And we attempted to continue the clinical instruction, but with the governor's executive order this week, we had little choice to move our 4th year clinical rotations to an online format. Luckily, we only have 2 rotations left. And so beginning on Monday, the 4th year clinical rotations will move to an online format. So no more clinical rotations through the hospital or the animal disease diagnostic laboratory. And as Dr. Wiseman mentioned, at the same time, we will transition our hospital to receive only emergency and urgent cases. So officially, the university is still open. We're not closed. And officially in the College of Veterinary Medicine, we are still receiving those urgent and emergency cases. So any referrals that you feel are absolutely urgent, we can accept those, will accept those. So needless to say, these are very challenging times, unprecedented times, and our students have been really very remarkable in how they've handled this. You can imagine, you know, leaving campus, then coming back and in a week and finding that all of your courses have moved to an online format. It can be quite traumatic, of course, for students, but they've handled it very, very well. And as I said, the faculty have done a tremendous job in transitioning those courses to a totally new format. So I guess with that, I'll stop. I don't want to repeat a lot of the things that Dr. Wiseman has already said, but I'll certainly take any questions.
Great, thank you. We'll do those at the end. Matt.
Yeah, so many of you may have received some communication yesterday, essentially that the FDA did make a ruling this week, essentially loosening veterinary telemedicine rules in relation to the federal BCPR. And essentially, what this all comes down to, all of the words on here, is that the loosening of, the idea that a VCPR can be established through telemedicine means, really from a federal standpoint, are only relevant to extra labeled drug use in animals and the veterinary feed directive, or the VFD. Again, this allows veterinarians to prescribe drugs in an extra label manner or authorize the use of a VFD without direct examination, again, through the use of telemedicine, which, limits the human-human interaction. But the change applies specifically to those areas. And the word that we are getting from FDA and AVMA is that this is on a federal level and state law still presides. And so, essentially here in Indiana, we just had a board meeting yesterday that our state veterinarian, Brett Marsh, participated in. Essentially in Indiana, the idea is that there's not necessarily a pushback against the FDA's ruling. However, the same rules apply in terms of how we establish the VCPR, which is essentially that the idea is we still, when we're adopting telemedicine and we're having consultations through telemedicine, we should already have a physical examination that has been performed and a valid VCPR to allow us to perform those telemedicine consultations. Indiana at this time does not have any, push to change things or loosen things up any more than that. So again, we can take questions about that here afterwards. I did want to just add a few things, just a couple of ideas that IVMA does want to get across that may not have come across within this presentation. But, as practitioners and veterinarians, we also should potentially be considering shifting our hours. And one of the things that I'm fairly passionate about at the moment, again, trying to look ahead, is realizing that ourselves and our team members, veterinary technicians and assistants and receptionists, everybody that works with us, we're probably in the near to far future, going to have little hiccups in the road where these people are getting sick. And I think it's very, very important for us as leaders, as practice owners, to start having plans for how to deal with that. Not only with what Hillary was mentioning in terms of what's the law and what do we have to do in terms of allowing time off and how to space ill employees, from the rest of the team. But also I think we need to have an idea of, we should be communicating with our neighbors in our communities and try to get ourselves off of islands and really take a community approach to how we're taking care of our patients. So if that means that you have a really small team and a couple of your team members get sick at the same time, how are you going to have that covered? Or, vice versa, be looking out for, clinics in your area as well. So that's probably something that's sort of up and coming, but I want to start that thought process now for everybody and just make this a community effort to not only take care of ourselves, but our patients. So again, thank you guys for listening. That's kind of the presentation. We appreciate your membership. We appreciate your participation. Our profession is very strong, and as members of the IVMA, so many of the things that we talked about are on our website. Essentially you just need to log in as a member and you have access to all the things that we have talked about. So a couple things. We do want to open this up for some questions. Again, please ask your questions in the chat. Lisa is going to moderate those, and as the questions come through, she'll ask them, and as a team, we'll try to answer them. If we don't get to your questions, right there is the email address for the IVMA. And so please take note of that. And if you have questions that are not resolved today, please ask them through email.
Great. Thanks, Matt. We do have a couple of questions, so let's get started. Maybe this first one could be for Dr. Wiseman. How do we find out about students in our area that we may be able to help with mentoring and skills acquisition in order to graduate?
Certainly we can't really release student information, but if someone is willing to mentor students, or just if they're in your area and there had to be students in your area, we can certainly release that to the students and they can look at it and see if it applies to them. So if anyone's interested, you're welcome to send me an email. I'll type my email into the chat box and you can just let me know and we'll put a list of those together and publish it to the students. Because it's really more for it could be for even underclassmen that are at home and doing their didactic work, their lecture type work, but looking for smart things to keep connected to veterinary medicine in a clinical setting. So I'll put my email there and you're welcome to email me, and then we'll put together a list and send it out to the students. So thank you for asking about that.
Great. Next question. So to clarify, that means that for an established patient, we can use extra labeled drugs if needed, but if we have never seen them before, we can't really do anything but triage. Would that be accurate?
So, again, some of this is kind of hazy, right? Like there's some room for interpreting things. As a small animal practitioner here in Indiana, I think best practice in terms of practicing telemedicine and establishing a VCPR is such that, in this time, we should be actively pursuing the ability to triage and have consultations with our established patients and clients. However, again, going back to what the rules have always been, if we have not seen that patient within a reasonable amount of time, which is generally accepted as a year, we really should be avoiding, going out and, just doing telemedicine with a patient like that. I would be interested to hear, from my standpoint, a little bit more comment about, the FDA's purpose potentially from Dr. Wiseman or Dean Reed. But again, I think from an IVMA standpoint, that announcement was not a message that was advocating for us to go out and establish, VCPRs without having seen a patient before.
I think that's right, Matt, but I haven't really had a chance to dig through that thoroughly to fully understand the limitations, if there are.
Okay, next question. Any guidance on what to expect if we have a staff member confirmed with COVID-19? Would that be the rest of us in quarantine also?
So the CDC has some good information out on those kinds of things. If you get on their website, I can't remember, Lisa, if you're the one who sent me the link, but the CDC website has specific recommendations for those types of situations, and how to get employees back to work faster than 14 days. It's not that everybody's in quarantine for 14 days by their recommendations online. So if you just go to cdc.gov and search actually employers, it's right on the main page. If you're click on the COVID-19, and it gives you recommendations on what to do for your employees, how long people should be in quarantine based on symptoms, kind of like we went over before. You need to be 72 hours symptom free before you come back to work. But it also discusses how long people who have been exposed should be quarantined for as well.
Yeah, my advice would be to contact your local health department, and they will walk you through all the steps that you would need to do. It's very hard to keep track of all the guidelines, but certainly the CDC website is excellent. But I would just reach out immediately to the health department, and if someone is positive, they likely will be contacting you to do the trace backs and to follow up anyway.
Great, thanks. Next question, where can we get information or webinars about setting up and running telemedicine? I can take this one. It's on the IVMA website. There's 3 boxes across the bottom of the marketing banner, and you can click on it there and easily access that, as well as the training webinar from last week. Next question, is it within acceptable procedures to have employees check their temperatures prior to each shift? And if we have a non-contact digital device, can we check them on arrival?
So
I believe that is part of the CDC guidelines that were issued.
It is, and it's what is being implemented in several fire departments and hospitals as well.
Yeah. Okay. Next question, any guidance on how to handle employees that might be putting the rest of the team at risk when they are not in compliance with current social distancing guidelines and requirements?
I can, I'll kind of chime in, and I would hope that others might have an opinion here. But again, there are essentially areas within all of this that are open for interpretation. Again, essential, urgent versus non-urgent, and then that also kind of applies to your team. I think if you are in a position of leadership, if you're a practice owner or an office manager or something along those lines, then it all starts with good communication and setting protocols. And while those protocols may not be extremely defined in terms of all of us as practices have to do the exact same thing, within your own practice and at your comfort level, as long as you're adhering to the basic parameters that have been set by the state, then it all comes back to communicating your hospital protocols. And essentially, if a team member is not adhering to your hospital protocols, then that comes down to, essentially your practices, guidelines on disciplinary action.
As a follow-up to that, someone commented that there are local health departments that have sent out a list of what to do with employees exposed to COVID-19 or presumed exposed. So you could definitely reach out in your county and see what information is available. Okay, next question. If a client has never seen a veterinarian before, how can we assist them? Is telemedicine appropriate in this type of situation?
This comes back again to the VCPR question, and if a client has never been to your practice and is reaching out, then essentially the guideline is that a physical examination would be the start of a valid VCPR, here in Indiana. That's the basis for everything. You know, in this time, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds with this and, you know, say something that gets misinterpreted, but in this time, you know, if it's been a year and a month since you saw a patient, you know, versus a year within the past year, is that something that, you know, the Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners is going to come after you about? You know, that is highly unlikely. And obviously we have to take some, you know, we have to understand the situation that we're all in and, you know, use our best judgment. But, you know, again, you could go in a much more extreme example. If you have somebody who you've literally never seen, or it's been 5 years since you've seen them, it's just not advisable to be setting up a VCPR through telemedicine. And so that person should be advised to go have an in-person exam and have a physical exam performed.
Great. Any other questions in the chat?
I do. I'll say, well, if we're waiting really quick, and again, going back to telemedicine, Lisa shared some links and some resources for everybody that the IVMA has on its website. Also, again, don't forget, you know, your IVMA leadership and the people in your community. You know, now you have a immediate past president, and president-elect who are all utilizing telemedicine. And we are very, very open to members reaching out to us and to having conversations, because, you know, watching a video and hearing a webinar is very helpful, but also there's going to be unique little challenges and things about your practice where you might have a specific question about telemedicine. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. That's what we are here for.
Great. Another question just came through. If you're doing curbside service, are you allowing any clients into the office? For example, emergency or euthanasia?
I will speak to this. So our clinic has gone stress-free handling, and we are at this time allowing some of those patients that really do a lot better, we already know, with their owner present, and then also euthanasias. We have worked really hard at getting those situations. I minimized my staff exposure. Again, I think that's kind of the key here. And so we are allowing some of those things to happen, but it's really a case-by-case thing as far as that goes. And I'm trying to bring them in a different door so other clients aren't, you know, kind of coming along with them.
Great. Any other last call? Okay. I will just add, and then I'll let Drs. Cantrell and Christner wrap it up. But the next phase of information the IVMA is going to be working on is rolling out information related to small business loans, unemployment issues, and the federal package, which we're waiting for Congress to finalize. So we expect another whole round of information to begin to roll out to you in the coming days, as well as some wellness information. And like I put in the chat, email us. You know, we want to keep a pulse on what's going on, what your questions and needs are. So please do so. That's what we're here for. So any last thoughts?
I don't have much else. I think it's going to take us working together as a community to protect our community. As Lisa said, reach out to us, whether it's the IVMA in general or to us personally. You know, telemedicine, curbside care, looking towards the future, and doing the right thing for our teams. And that's sort of what we're up against right now.
I would just echo what Matt says. I think that pulling together now is more important than ever. And using your IVMA membership benefits. I think that there's a lot of great information still to come, and the IVMA is providing the quickest and most clear-cut information that I've seen out there. So we'll continue to tackle this together.
Great. All right. With that, I posted the email in there. Email us any questions. That's what we're here for. And you all stay safe, stay well, and stay in touch. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye-bye.